Don't move. Hands up now.
Sir, there's no cause for this. I'm compliant.
I said don't move. Do it again and you're under arrest.
You're escalating without grounds. Call your supervisor.
Stay right there. One more move and this gets worse.
The gas pump shut off with a sharp click at precisely 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon that would alter two lives forever. Judge Robert Sterling had stopped for fuel on his drive home from the courthouse, still dressed in his tailored black suit and tie. He had just concluded a long and emotionally charged custody hearing and was looking forward to a peaceful evening with his wife of 23 years. The last thing he could have imagined was that this ordinary stop would soon dominate national headlines and expose a disturbing reality about racial profiling in America. Before we continue with this unbelievable story, let me know where you're watching from by dropping your location in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now, because what unfolds next is absolutely shocking. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Judge Sterling was widely respected throughout his community. At 54 years old, he had spent over a decade on the bench after climbing the legal ladder from public defender to prosecutor and ultimately to his current role as a judge. He was known for his fairness, his deep understanding of the law, and his unwavering commitment to justice. Colleagues often describe him as someone who never raised his voice in court, yet commanded absolute authority through calm confidence and legal precision. He lived in an upscale neighborhood, drove a modest luxury sedan, and regularly participated in local charitable work. Nothing about Robert Sterling suggested controversy, scandal, or drama. That Tuesday had begun like any other. He arrived at the courthouse early, reviewed his caseload, and worked through a packed schedule of hearings. The custody case had been particularly challenging, involving two parents who clearly loved their children but were incapable of cooperating with one another. Judge Sterling took extra time to ensure his ruling was balanced and fair, especially for the children caught in the conflict. When he finally left the courthouse, he was exhausted but satisfied that he had done his job correctly. The gas station he stopped at was one he had visited countless times before. It sat conveniently between the courthouse and his neighborhood, clean, well-lit, and typically filled with other professionals heading home after work. He pulled into pump number 6, stepped out of his car, and began the familiar process of refueling. He swiped his credit card, selected regular unleaded, and inserted the nozzle into the tank. Everything was completely routine. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious, nothing that should have drawn attention. But across the parking lot, Officer David Kane was watching him closely. Kane was a 15-year veteran of the police department and had been assigned to patrol the area for the past 3 years. He drove an unmarked cruiser and frequently stopped at the same gas station for coffee or fuel. That afternoon, he had pulled into the lot to grab a snack when he noticed Judge Sterling standing at the pump. What followed would later be analyzed by attorneys, civil rights advocates, and media outlets across the country. In Officer Kane's initial report, he claimed to have observed a black male wearing expensive clothing behaving suspiciously near a luxury vehicle. He alleged that the man appeared nervous and took an unusually long time to pump gas. Kane later testified that his training and experience told him something wasn't right. However, the security footage told a very different story. The video showed Judge Sterling acting exactly like any other customer. He appeared calm and focused, checking his phone briefly while the tank filled, glancing at the price display, and casually looking around the station the way people naturally do while waiting. There was no nervous behavior, no suspicious movements, and nothing that would justify concern from a reasonable observer. Officer Kane approached Judge Sterling while he was still pumping gas. He did not identify himself as a police officer. Instead, he walked up behind him and abruptly asked what he was doing. Confused, Judge Sterling turned around and politely replied that he was filling his car with gas. Kane then demanded to see his identification. Sterling asked why, pointing out that he was simply a paying customer like everyone else. This was the moment the situation began to escalate. Kane's questioning became more aggressive. He asked Judge Sterling how he could afford such an expensive vehicle, where he worked, where he lived, and why he was in the area. Sterling remained calm but firm, stating that he had every right to be there, and asking Kane to identify himself as an officer and explain the legal basis for the questioning. Kane then made his first major mistake. He told Judge Sterling that he looked out of place in the neighborhood and that luxury cars were frequently stolen in the area. He claimed he was conducting a routine investigation and needed to confirm that the car belonged to Sterling. When Sterling asked to see Kane's badge and identification, the officer became defensive and accused him of being uncooperative. Other customers began noticing the interaction. A woman fueling her SUV a few pumps away pulled out her phone and started recording. A man inside the convenience store stepped outside to see what was happening. The gas station attendant, a college student named Tyler who had worked there for 2 years, later said he immediately felt something was wrong with how the officer was treating the well-dressed customer. When Judge Sterling finished pumping gas and attempted to replace the nozzle, Officer Kane stepped closer and ordered him not to move. Sterling asked if he was being detained and on what grounds. Kane said he was investigating and needed Sterling to stay until his identity and vehicle ownership could be verified. Sterling calmly explained that he had already provided his driver's license and registration, both of which matched his appearance and the vehicle. That's when Kane made a far more serious mistake. He placed his hand on his service weapon and told Judge Sterling that he was acting suspiciously and needed to comply or face arrest. Sterling noticed the officer's hand on the gun and realized the situation had turned dangerous. He raised his hand slightly and, using the calm tone he employed in court, identified himself as a judge, explained he was simply buying gas, and requested that Kane call his supervisor. Kane laughed and said he didn't believe him. He demanded proof, such as a business card. The irony was overwhelming. A man who had devoted his life to enforcing the law was now being treated like a criminal by someone sworn to uphold it. Sterling slowly reached into his jacket and retrieved a business card, moving deliberately to avoid alarming the officer. Kane barely glanced at the card before dismissing it as fake, stating that anyone could print business cards. He then demanded to search Sterling's vehicle for evidence of theft, despite already having proof of ownership. By now, multiple customers were watching and several were recording. The station security cameras captured everything. Have you ever witnessed something like this in public? Type yes in the comments if you have, because what happens next shows just how fast situations like this can spiral out of control. Judge Sterling refused consent for the search, explaining that Kane lacked probable cause. He again asked for a supervisor and suggested calling the courthouse to verify his identity. Kane grew more aggressive, accusing Sterling of being argumentative and stating that innocent people don't refuse searches. He then made a comment that would later be critical in the civil rights lawsuit, saying people like Sterling didn't belong in the neighborhood and that he intended to uncover whatever scam Sterling was running. Tyler later testified that he had never seen Kane treat white customers this way, even those who were visibly intoxicated or disruptive. The breaking point came when Sterling announced he was leaving. Kane blocked the car door, gripped his weapon, and threatened arrest. Sterling stood frozen as Kane's hand rested on the gun, an unspoken threat. Sterling slowly pulled out his phone, saying he would call the courthouse. Kane ordered him to put away, claiming he was trying to contact accomplices. Tyler went inside and called the police department, reporting that an officer was harassing a customer. Meanwhile, a woman named Maria Santos, a local teacher, identified herself and insisted on recording. Kane ordered her to stop, but she refused. Kane demanded to search the trunk and threatened AK-9 unit. Sterling began calmly listing Kane's constitutional violations. This enraged Kane further. Another customer, Frank Peterson, witnessed a contrast in Kane's behavior towards Sterling versus himself. Peterson verified Sterling's identity by calling the courthouse. Despite confirmation, Kane accused Peterson of interference. He then called for backup, falsely describing the situation. More people arrived, live streaming the incident. When Sergeant Lisa Rodriguez arrived, she immediately recognized the problem. She approached Sterling respectfully and listened as he explained everything, providing identification and evidence. Rodriguez listened carefully, fully aware that everything had been recorded.